Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Awakening series. What is going on in our world? So, in this first episode, we're going to talk about the emotional game. And I'd really love to suggest to you that right now we have the opportunity to redefine how we play our game in all areas of our life. And the emotional game is about rewriting our relationship with our emotions. And for me, this actually has been the bridge to me finding a reconnection back to my true nature. It's been the way that I have been able to really live from presence every day because, well, let's think about it logically. When you're sitting in beautiful states of being and you're feeling happy and joyful, what is it that knocks you out? It's the feelings that come up in the body. It takes us away from a feeling of being here, because we jump into our head and we're trying to figure things out, and we often project into the future, and that creates an amplified feeling of powerlessness, out of control, and anxiety that actually makes it worse for us. So we want to really be able to stay present, because that is how we process the emotion and actually begin to unlock these states of joy that we all have access to in every moment that can reharmonize the moment that we're in. I've noticed that the more that I understand my emotions and I use them, and I'm going to talk about how we can use them differently to how we have been using them, I build my sense of presence. The presence that I am. It seems like there's more of me here all the time, and my capacity to be like fully here, not in my head thinking about things, not in the future worried about what's going to happen, not in the past regretting, like all of that stuff disappears. So it's totally like a highly recommended way to live. I want to talk about the emotional game though, because even though I hear a lot of words around us becoming more present, being in the here and now, the focus on the emotions, it is, I believe, the way that we get to purify the heart. So my understanding is that the past experiences and hurt and pain that I experienced as a child really impacted the capacity for me to have a very open heart. And that doesn't mean that I give my heart to people freely and that I accept unacceptable behavior. In order for me to be able to purify my heart and protect my heart at the same time, I really need to be emotionally responsible, which is really not what we've been programmed to do. My emotional awakening, and I had two, I believe. One was when I was 37, and I had this awakening where I realized that I hadn't actually felt like I thought that I felt, because I cried all the time. But my capacity to really feel into the body, I just didn't have that, because my strategy to deal with any uncomfortable emotion was to jump into my head and try and figure it out. Sometimes I'd cry a lot. Either way, I never actually sat with the emotion. And so I spent the next 12 years really understanding my emotions. And I got to see that every emotion that I have, every feeling, is actually a call to take back my true power, a call for me to come home to myself. And I started to notice that if I treated each emotion as such, I no longer reacted. So, like you have a feeling, you often react, and then you feel powerless, frustrated, anxious. What if we did the opposite? What if we had a feeling, instantly flipped our state of being, took back our power, and then all of a sudden we have all of this creative potential to actually do something with the situation at hand? I fully believe that that's actually our natural way of living. It's just that, like so many other things in life, we have been taught the opposite. We've been programmed to do the opposite. So our reactions lead to a state of separation where we can no longer feel connected to our true innate power because we're powerless. We then do whatever basically we're led to do or forced to do or coerced to do because we're so fearful for our own security. But imagine the opposite. So for me, as I started to look and feel into my emotions, I noticed that my feelings were giving me messages, and they were showing me where I could go in my body to actually reclaim parts of myself that just weren't operating. They were completely shut down. And because these parts of me were shut down, I really wasn't operating from my power in those areas. Over a period of 12 years, I started to reclaim all the parts of me that had been experiencing hurt, pain, trauma, all those parts of the body that hold emotion, stored emotion, that need to be woken up and utilized to their fullest potential. And all that energy, and there's so much of this. I don't really want to go into this because I know that there's so much information on dealing with the shadow and, going in and all the energy that's trapped in these emotions. Yes, all of that is true. And yes, all of that has a place. And yes, beyond the wound, as we learn to live from our true nature, we then choose to no longer step into reaction and unconsciously create suffering. We get to prevent situations, and we also get to rewire or reconstruct the life that we're living, so that in that moment we're turning from a story of powerlessness into a story of empowerment, where we actually take back more empowerment, take back more of our presence in this moment, and create a new potential for the end of our story. In that particular moment, our emotional awakening allows us to fully feel life in this body. A living experience is an experience, and an experience is a feeling thing. It's not a thinking thing. So doesn't it make sense to you that as I emotionally awake and I understand how to use my feelings in the way that they were always intended to naturally expand my presence in this body, that my experience of life also expands and gets better and better and better? I have access to more inner power. I have access to exalted states of being that I couldn't once before access because of the way I lived out my emotional state. What I notice is, as I'm living from this life where I am using my emotions, it feels to me like I'm in a state of living wisdom from the situations that arise, because good and bad situations always arise. I get to withdraw the wisdom from that situation in that moment and add it to the life that I'm having. So I'm actually living that wisdom in real life. I'm going to suggest to you that when we redefine how we play our emotional game, we change absolutely everything in our life, because a relationship, which is what we are in with our life, we're in relationship with money, with things, with people, with work, with our partners, with ourselves. We are in relationship with everything, and our emotional state determines the nature of that relationship. And so if we have an emotional awakening, the emotional reactions that we have become opportunities to expand the love and connection in every single relationship we have. So our emotions, rather than being the things that create division and separation, our emotions now, when we flip it over, they create this living wisdom, so that we can start living in a way that actually expands the harmony. And so we can feel more connected with every emotional experience we have. And let me give you a real life example of this. One of the things that I am super passionate about, this is actually one of my values and the way that I choose to live my life. I don't support anybody with anything unless I've been through it myself, I've done it myself, and I know it works. I speak from experience. I don't speak from a textbook or from what I've heard online or any other place. I speak from the truth of my being, because I know something to be true. Now, just because I know it to be true doesn't mean it's true for you. And so what gives weight to the things that I share is when I share this with other people and they affirm that they too have had similar experiences. So I know through these sharings that the things that I'm suggesting are very helpful. Sure, that they might not work for everybody. That's okay. We're all individuals. And I think stories are really so important for understanding how these things play out in our life. So I spent 12 years really understanding my emotions. And by that, I mean, I lent into everything. I allowed life to inform me. Every time I had a feeling, I chose to use it to empower myself, to take back my power, to see where I was giving my power away, to actually go find that place where I did not step into my power and I felt powerless, which is why I was having a reaction. I wanted to find the emotional need that was being activated in each of those moments. So I lent in all the time with curiosity and diligence. I was so diligent. And I learnt that there were certain things that I would do that I could prevent. When I got to know how I worked emotionally, I could actually almost read the future, and I stopped setting myself up. I ceased having the challenges and the suffering that was such a big part of my life before I started actually walking this emotional path. But the crux came when one Friday I intercepted a message from my partner and a younger girl that was living in our house. And now my partner and I, because I'd been on this journey of emotional awakening, we talked about everything that we were experiencing. Well, at least I thought we were doing that. We even wrote a book on right relationship and co-created relationships. That's such a funny thing, isn't it? How people that are experts or believe they're experts in a field, it doesn't take long for life to actually knock them off their pedestal. Well, that was me at the time. So here I am thinking that I'm in this co-creative relationship, and our life is just going to be an expanded version of the love that I'm feeling, bigger and better all the time, and experiencing beautiful dreams and lovely deep connection. And then this one day I've intercepted this text between, on my computer on Apple sharing, thank you Apple, between my partner and the young girl that we're living with. Now, I went into a state of complete dysfunction. My whole future had been just ripped away from me. And I remember thinking I felt like I had been thrown out of my house in the middle of the night with no clothes, no warmth, in the rain, and the door had just been shut in my face. I felt completely helpless and powerless. I'm sure that I went back to a very childlike state where I didn't even have any resources to take any step at all to get myself out of this state, because everything I believed to be true was not true. And when your whole world falls away from around you, it is, and I know many of you have had that experience, right? It's the most frightening experience ever. It can just destroy you. And for me, it sent me into this deepest, darkest place. I went into the fetal position. I had a young daughter at the time. She was 12, and I just was incapable of looking after her. I mean, I made her meals, but, I was just sitting in my fetal position. She was watching television. I also had a puppy. And they say how we what's going on the inside often manifests outside. Well, I walked out of my bedroom at one stage and the puppy had found the toilet paper. And of course the toilet paper was all over the house. And it was just how I felt on the inside, a complete and utter chaos. And I went back and I was lying on my bed in this fetal position. And because I understood that my emotions had a purpose, I was able to lean into them a bit. Now, everything I knew to do with emotions that I'd shared with people that had worked for me, nothing was working. All I knew to do was just be with it, Lisa, if you can just be with it. And I noticed as I was being with my feeling how when my mind came in and told me a story, like, how could they do that to me? That's so unkind. I have been so kind. I've been so caring. This is so cruel. Like the story was like putting petrol over the flame. And so I started to feel the difference. It was a very subtle difference that allowed me to see, okay, emotion was one thing, but when my thoughts came in, that was a totally different level of emotion. That was Saturday. And I'm battling with this feeling and trying to lean in, and then all of a sudden I get taken out again, and I'm leaning in and I'm taken out, and I'm just like, I actually, for the first time in my life, really wanted to kill myself because I could not see a way through the pain. And on the Sunday, I woke up the same, and then it was sort of like, okay, what if I reach out to somebody? Somebody must have had an experience of what to do with these thoughts that just keep adding to my suffering. And I reached out to a lady who had actually been in AA for quite a while, and she said the only thing that helped her when she was in states like this was to recite the Francis of Assisi prayer. Now, the purpose of this prayer, not even so much that it's the prayer itself, but what you're doing is you're giving your mind something to do while you're allowing your body to process the emotion. And so I learned this prayer diligently. Like, it took me mental effort to learn the words, and then I just kept repeating it and repeating it like a mantra. I actually had no connection to what the words meant. I mean, they're beautiful words if you know the prayer, but I had no connection to that. It was just as a way of keeping my mind occupied. And then I woke up on the Monday morning and my state of being hadn't changed very much. I was still like, I just want to kill myself. I had no future. It was a blank canvas. I couldn't even see a way out of where I was. And something awakened in me. Now, I'd like to call this the presence in me, the divinity in me, the natural part of me, this core knowing, sort of started to rise up in me, and it brought with it a power. And this feeling inside of me was like, you know what? I might be going to feel pain, but I am effed if I'm going to suffer anymore. I am going to use this to take back my power. And I made this decision. And so come mid-afternoon on Monday, I reached out to another friend and I was telling him about my decision, and I didn't feel much better, but I'd made a decision. And as we were talking, I seemed to go through this process of really identifying the pain. And then all of a sudden I noticed there was a shift, and it was like I moved into a new state of being. And this new state of being was, well, I have to accept this. I don't condone it. I don't like it, but it's done. I can't change it. So it's stupid resisting it. It cannot be changed. It's already done. I have to accept it. And it was like the shift of my state of being, just from the pain and the intensity into just opening the door to seeing that, okay, this was done. Somehow I have to be at ease with this moment as it is. And I felt my state of being shift. And then what I noticed as I sat in that place, and I allowed this to be true. I accepted and I allowed this moment to be exactly what it was. And then something else happened. I felt my whole being moving again. It was so subtle, and it was just like this tiny, tiny little subtle shift. And all of a sudden, this incredible state of being came over me, and it was like, oh, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I just screamed with excitement. I went into this ecstatic bliss. I could see where I had not been on my path, where I had not been true to me, where I had not been in my true power. And I could see I was just slightly off center, and I got back onto it as a result of this experience. And reconnecting with that true power was just like this ecstatic state that overcame me. I don't think that I'm the only person that has the capacity to do this. I totally believe that when we understand our emotions are not there to help us feel powerless and make us feel downtrodden and beat us up, they are not there for that. They are the universal energy moving through us to help us heal whatever is stuck in our body, so that we can lighten up and we can bring in more bliss, and we can actually start to develop this living wisdom in our being. It's a state of being that we get to step into, where the emotions that come through, they might contain pain. For example, my mum passed away last year, and I remember it was such an interesting experience because of course there was sadness and loss, but leaning into it, this intense joy overcame me, almost like all of the potential that she'd had and didn't get to express it all came into my body. And so this moment was the most joyful experience, and at the same time I felt loss, the loss and the pain, but both of them were there at the same time. And truly, this way of living, I think this is important because we are in a body. If we weren't in a body, we could have a spiritual awakening and know ourselves to be God, and that would be fine. But the truth is that we're in a body. And because we're in a body, why not amplify the experience? Why not create more connection? Why not express more and more love every day, more and more harmony? Why not see what we can co-create from the beauty that lies within us? Why not do that? Wouldn't that be an optimal way to live? I'm going to encourage you to change the way you think about your emotions. Change the game that you play when you feel shitty about your own life. Because if you do that, you have a much greater chance of quickly being able to use that emotional energy build it into living wisdom and return to a state of presence that is more expanded, more connected, more loving as a result. And that then allows you to share the joy and the playfulness that every single one of us has the right to experience in our life. I truly hope you've enjoyed this redefining the emotional game. Next, we are going to talk about redefining our relationship game. This is what comes next when you start to change the emotional game. Please subscribe. I really appreciate your support, and I'd really love to build this body of work into something that can help people live a more empowered life. And if you have a moment, click on the link to my website and join our Heart Hub. This is a weekly mail out where I actually hold a 20-minute space every Monday morning so that you can access the magic that dwells within you. Sending you love.